There's nothing more demanding and swiftly evolving than the field of management education that needs to form leaders to impact society for good. I'm here to meet the new president and dean of the Asian Institute of Management, who is promising to take this institution to a global level with her expertise and experience, a passion for excellence, and a vision to ensure that this institution takes its rightful place as one of the world's premier institutions for management and leadership excellence. Join me as I meet Dr. Jikyeong Kang, our thought leader for this week. Jikyeong, thank you so much for hosting us at the Institute.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
And one of the things that I found tremendous learning about your life is that you were refreshingly candid about your failures and how you overcame them. So I want to start with that. You wanted to be a political reporter, interestingly enough, very far cry from a management educator. Tell us about how fate intervened and how you overcame that initial difficulty.
I talk about this especially with education as a context, and especially if I have an opportunity to talk about my experience in front of potential students or young people. Because personally, I think, although at the time it was really difficult, perhaps best thing ever happened to me. I really think not only because of what happened, I had an opportunity to go to America, get my graduate degrees and learn and become a person who I am today. But I think the opportunity to learn from my failure made me a better person.
One of the things you did was pursue an education degree at an undergraduate institution. Tell us about how that formed your life.
I think it was the time when I actually decided to study education. I didn't have a grandiose plan about my life to becoming an educator per se. But when I did my practicum in the senior year, we were out at a high school and we stayed there for about a month. And it was not the most well-regarded school where a lot of rich students go. But the difference that we were able to make as a student teacher during 1 month really made impression upon me in terms of what you as a teacher could do in changing the young people's perspectives about their life and how they take their life forward. So it really gave me a tremendous opportunity to think about what I want to do with my life.
Well, it's certainly a fascinating vocation and a great start, but then you mentioned your trip across, the Pacific into the United States. Tell us about when you pursued your graduate degree. Why something as specific as retailing as a master's degree? What drove you to take that course?
Half of it is I've always taken interest in business, and retailing was something I could relate to. So if you actually look at my master's degree and PhD and what I taught when I was a professor, it actually made a slight changes every time I progressed to the next step. I was finding more about what I want to do with my profession as well as with my life, and looking for the next challenge. I think that has been the theme of my life, if you will.
Well, it certainly looks like a progressive evolution, but interesting enough, that evolution really was formed in the United States. This is the mecca of retailing. And also, it's certainly a very diverse melting pot, of a culture. Tell us about how you adjusted to that culture there, and obviously, from Colorado going to the University of Minnesota to take your PhD. How did that all come together?
Little bit of a serendipity. I went to the States at the beginning to do my master's. So as I talked about earlier, because I didn't get to the university with the major that I thought that I would actually have, I was looking for another opportunity, and it happens to be retailing. While I was studying retailing, I actually developed a lot more interest in not only the business side, but understanding consumer psychology, people's motivations to do certain things, why businesses are taking certain decisions. So then I made a transition into more general marketing, in particular consumer behavior and branding. And going from master's to PhD is really because of my mentor. When I went to America to do my master's, it was to do master's. and I was going to come back to Korea.
And perhaps work in an industry.
Absolutely, that was my plan. But when I was doing my master's program, he was so encouraging in terms of, I think you should really do a PhD. You should become a professor rather than just a teacher. And that meant so much to me, especially because I just came out of a period where I thought, and I failed myself, I disappointed my parents, and that encouragement meant that I didn't want to let him down. So it's a little bit of me thinking of doing PhD was I wanted to make him happy, I wanted to make my parents happy, and eventually that meant that I was making myself happy. I mean, this is what I really wanted to do. So it started with perhaps slightly different intention or motivation, but it ended up being probably the best decision I've ever made. By the time I finished my PhD, what I gained, which was most valuable, was to gain confidence about myself again. And I think that was the most valuable lesson. So you got to know where you're heading, but you have to communicate why you're making certain decisions and always engaging with them to sell your ideas, to sell your vision, really.